The roll.
Miranda Frost,
Here.
Charles Hudson,
Here.
Ann Sermon, Norman Crowe, here, Jody Singleton,
Here.
Timothy Guyan, Paul Kennedy,
Here.
Amy Price, Larry Turner,
Here.
Stan Pilot, Stan Nelson, here, and Rod Scott.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Everyone should have had time to review the agenda. Chair entertains a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye, and all opposed, like sign. Agenda is approved. Everyone should have also had time to review the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Chair entertains a motion to approve the minutes of the September 9th, 2022 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye,
Aye.
and all opposed, like sign. Minutes are approved. I'd like to welcome all of the guests that are here today. I believe we have President Jimmy Hodges of Calhoun Community College. Good to see you, sir. And also Don Killingsworth of Jacksonville State University. Good to see you as well. My name is Miranda Frost. I'm the new chair, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity to serve this great state of Alabama. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Button for his leadership and his service as well. We will miss him. And I thank you so much for the opportunity. All right. Per the commission's bylaws, as chairman, I'm required to appoint commissioners to each of our two standing committees. Based on that requirement, I would like to make the following appointments. Academic Affairs, Commissioner Turner is chair, Commissioner Guyan, Commissioner Button, and Commissioner Sermon. For Financial Affairs, Commissioner Nelson is chair, Commissioner Pilot, Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Scott, and Commissioner Singleton. I'm also required to appoint an executive committee. The executive committee is empowered to act on behalf of the commission between regularly scheduled meetings of the commission, with said action being subject to ratification by the full commission at a regular or special held meeting in accordance with all laws requiring open and public meetings. The bylaws state that the committee shall consist of the chairman, vice chairman, and such other commissioners as appointed by the chairman, the number of which shall not exceed 4. For the executive committee, it's myself as chair, vice chair Amy Price, Academic Affairs Committee Chair Larry Turner, and Financial Affairs Committee Chair Stan Nelson. I will now turn it over to Dr. Purcell for the Executive Director's report.
Well, greetings, everyone. It's good to see you all. We have new employees. We have Tamia Goodwin. She's the newest of our staff. She'll be helping us with graphic design on a part-time basis. She just graduated from with a BFA in graphic design from AUM, just to show you that they can get degrees right off and work in a good place. She was cum laude and has experience as she worked through her school related to that. As you know, we've hired some AIC fellows recently to do different special projects, and they're mostly graduate students or people that just finished. This lady just won a best paper award at the Annual Association of Career and Technical Education meeting in Las Vegas. So we're excited to have our agency well represented and bringing new knowledge to the forefront. Went to a graduation to see, not a graduation, but inauguration for Joe Bonner. It made big news, as you can sort of see in the top. Everybody was excited about that transition and everything went well. I got a chance to go to the event. Ann Sermon and I met up at the reception, and fun was had by all. I've been over to South Carolina and Mississippi to talk about stuff we're doing here that they had interest in, a lot of it related to the FAFSA completion project we worked on. And I also talked to them about these 7 things, the big issues. So one day we want to talk about this, but today we have lots of things to do, so we're not. But this is what the big issues people are talking about on campuses and things that all of us should be concerned about, even in this state. FAFSA completion continues, and we got to go to New Orleans for that, Atlanta. Went to DC just this week there. They've done a publication, Sierra Cedar did a publication on our work here. And you're asking, why do I keep bringing this up? Those of you that are still new in your career, what you need to do is always, as I work in Oklahoma, we used to say, ride that Palomona, was it Palomona? What's the type of horse? Palomino. Ride your Palomino until the spots drop off. So this is sort of like I've done on that. So, and I will continue. Thank you, sir. The AKEEP is, you know, an entity that receives funding through us. They've had some great success. They've got 10 students that are learning more education components. They all have degrees right now from Korea in education, and we're helping them sort of transition so they can actually teach Americans whose the discipline structure in their country is a little bit different. So they're getting a master's, and they'll be working in our schools in Alabama to help address our math and science shortage. We've also had 49 students who had interest in that coming to our state and experience practicums at our schools this year. So that's pretty exciting. But the most exciting thing is that they are converting their name to the Alabama International Education and Economic Partnership. Now it's going to be called AIE rather than AKEEP. And that's because a lot of the other manufacturers who have populations here said, hey, you know, we'd love to participate in this too. Also had some changes. As you know, we used to like people from mainland China, but then we don't, but we still want to teach Chinese. So AKEEP has helped us establish some relationships with the Taiwanese who actually speak the same language, more or less. That's been helpful, and they've been able to receive several grants from National Security Agency and other people federally to help us broaden the educational experiences for people in our school. We went around and talked about what AIC can do for the workforce. These were our regional meetings. And you'll sort of see where we went to Jacksonville State, had a great time. Went to Alabama State here in town, got a lot of good press coverage. And then at Troy University, Charles Button came, and we had a good time. You'll see me in front of the Lamar P. Higgins Ballroom. I mentioned that because he and I went to school together. He recently passed. They gave that to him as an honorary situation. But Miranda Chair Frost was with us up in Athens, and Amy Price was with us at Jacksonville State to support the team. While I was out traveling, I visited a couple of cool places. One of them is the Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering. They've been around a couple of years. They have their brand new campus, as you can sort of see the picture. It is more beautiful than it looks, even though it looks beautiful. If you're looking for a way to do fundraising, those guys, as a basically 8th to 12th grade or 9th to 12th grade school, bought 21 acres right next to UAH, which is not easy. They actually built this building with state funding and local support. And then a lot of the big technology people actually do release time for their researchers to come and teach classes there. Very impressive event. And they did everything right. See where the arrow is? That is their 400-seat auditorium for events that they have. And they strategically aligned it so you can always be reminded that they are right here in Huntsville, facing the future of the world. Chair Frost is actually on their board, and I'm sure she was involved in helping people know the value of that. So we hope that you help us build a big AIC campus one day. Also, this is the same person, Lamar Higgins, who was from my high school. Recently passed. He was on the board of trustees at Troy. They just have a Lamar Higgins ballroom at the Rosa Parks Museum here downtown. We had a nice ceremony at President Hawkins with the reenactor of Rosa Parks. It was a great event. Lamar was a deacon in the same church that Rosa Parks was a member of when she lived here in town, and was instrumental in helping Ms. Parks help us get funding for the museum. There's always a question about what staff do when they aren't working. This is, you know, y'all just think we're just robots, right? But this is an example. This is Dr. Hood. Dr. Hood, raise your hand wherever you are. There he is. Stand up, Dr. Hood. They need to know what you look like. So anyway, Dr. Hood, looking his intelligent, brilliant, researchy, mathematically mechanic self, but this is what he does. He played an Irish proving guard in a TV show the other day. So this I'll get Dr. Hood. Well, we'll try to do that as we find significant things that we do, because some of us do not do anything significant out of work. But I want you to know that that does happen. So now we're to discussion items, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that wonderful report. Margaret Gunter will introduce our first discussion item.
Commissioners, I don't think we can top the prison guard here, but I'm glad y'all made it through the wintry weather this Christmas season on your Palabonos and got them down here. We've got the best part of the whole program that's coming up right now. Our F-Score is a program that we've been involved with are we having clicker problems again?
No, turn it on.
Alabama F-Score is a research program that has been around since the early 80s in the state of Alabama, and we've been involved with it extensively. It uses the research universities throughout the state to bring more federal dollars into the state, also to create programs and companies. And a lot of these companies that have been created from F-Score students are startups that have employed a lot of people throughout the state. You have a copy of their annual report in front of you, but I want to point out that in June, they were awarded a $20 million National Science Foundation F-Score grant. It's entitled Future Technologies and Enabling Plasma Processes. And this sets a record because combining this with the other monies that they've received this year, they now have $42 million that has come into the state for research. That is a real plus for the economy. So now I want to get right into our speaker. First of all, I want to tell you that she has a very common Southern name, and that is so unlike other speakers that we have had from F-Score. But Sarah Sims is one of these people. She came to Alabama from out of state to go to school. And the best part is she is planning on staying in the state to work. She came to go to UAB. She completed her undergraduate degree in immunology. She's working on a master's degree in biology. She is an awardee of the 2022 round 17 Alabama F-Score Graduate Research Scholars Program. So she is doing some work right now. She's going to come up and talk to us about her journey, how she got on the path, and how she's going to be continuing on. And all I'm going to tell you about her topic is that it involves fruit flies. And Sarah said she liked working with fruit flies because they're very easy to manage. Sarah, tell us more about it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Sarah, and I will be telling you all today about my journey as an F-Score scholar. So I'd like to begin speaking about my own personal story. So this is me and my mom during my high school graduation in 2017. I was an ambitious honors student with interest in science. And like many other 18-year-olds at this point, I didn't really know how my interest could lead to a career. So being one of the first people in my family to attend a four-year college, and certainly the first to consider graduate education, I didn't have a whole lot of guidance in planning my academic future. Because medical school was portrayed as the ultimate goal for students that were interested in science, I decided on attending the University of Alabama at Birmingham with the goal of completing a medical degree. So once I got to UAB, I wanted to get involved in the student population. And so I joined several student groups on campus. However, I really longed for more involvement within the realm of science. That's where my passion was. I had always had an interest in scientific research, so I decided to apply to research labs on campus. I wasn't interested in working with the typical mice or rat labs. And I had always had an interest in bugs ever since I was a little kid. So whenever I saw that there was a fruit fly lab hiring a student research assistant, I was like, oh, I'm gonna give that a shot. So when I received an email offering me the position in Dr. Nicole Riddle's lab, I immediately accepted. Here I would be able to gain research experience, which at the time I thought would be an important stepping stone on my way to medical school. So then I joined the Riddle Lab in 2018, and after a year or so in the lab, I started working on my own research project. And as I gained more experience working with fruit flies and gathering my data, presenting at local and national conferences, I had to do a reality check with myself because my interest was no longer in medical school. I found out that my heart was in research. So with graduation fast approaching, I had to make a big change for my future. I quit the pre-medical pathway and I applied to graduate school at UAB. I was accepted into UAB's graduate program on a fast track path to where I could start pursuing my graduate degree early at the same time as my senior year. Thus, I began my path towards a Master of Science in Biology while finishing my senior undergraduate studies. This is me on my senior graduation day, and I even wore a little fruit fly pin, if you can see it, on one of my academic medals as just like a nod to my research journey. So now I've been pursuing my master's in biology full-time for about a year now. My degree is thesis-based, so I will be presenting my thesis to my graduate committee with the hopes of them approving me for candidacy. And through this degree program, I took a variety of rigorous science classes, and I work on my research project every day of the week. So this is all preparing me for a successful career as a research scientist in Alabama. So now I'd like to get into a little bit about my research project. Hopefully not going to scare you all too much, trying to really go simple here. But starting just very basic. Some of you may have seen an image like this before. This is what's called a karyotype. So a karyotype is simply just a group of your chromosomes. It's an individual's chromosomes. You may know that each and every single one of us has 23 different pairs of chromosomes, so which you can see mapped out here. So these chromosome structures are responsible for carrying all of our genetic information. They're what makes you, you. And they're typically portrayed in this linear X-shaped structure. So if you zoom in on a chromosome to see what it's really made of, you see a tightly wound complex that's called chromatin. Now, chromatin has a very important job. It takes all of your genetic information and coils it into these compact chromosomes that basically organize your genetic information. So you can think of this kind of like a tightly wound coil of Christmas lights. So this chromatin structure will allow the cell to control which portions of DNA are used. Controlling which sections of DNA are used is very critical because if DNA usage is not controlled, it can lead to bad things like disease development, cancer development, and so on. So this is the same idea with that string light analogy. If your string lights are all loose and disorganized, as some of you may have had to deal with this season, bad things might happen, like busting a bulb when you try to untangle them. So organization is very important for your genome. If you zoom in even further on chromatin itself, you see that chromatin is made up of DNA strands that are wound around proteins. So DNA is the black string there wound around your little blue proteins. And it's often called the molecule of life because it provides the information required for an organism's development, and it's present in all of our cells. Now, there are many different proteins that are a part of chromatin, and my research focuses on the heterochromatin protein 1 family, which is a mouthful, that can also just be called the HP1 family. So this protein family influences which of those DNA pieces are used in a cell. So in previous studies, it's been shown that if you lose a protein family like HP1, the result can be disease and cancer development. Now, a large number of organisms have HP1 proteins, including ourselves, humans. Our lab is interested in how these multiple HP1 proteins work together. Our main interest is in 3 different HP1 proteins, all of which affect your DNA and impact overall health. And although HP1 proteins have been studied individually, there are very few studies that look at how they actually work together. Now that's where I come in. My project involves removing a pair of these HP1 proteins to examine the effects on chromatin and your DNA. This study will identify how HP1 proteins interact with one another and if the loss of one of them is going to affect the one that remains. So given that HP1 proteins are present in many species, including humans, the findings from my project will be informative for chromatin researchers in a variety of organisms. Now, this is what you've all been waiting for. In my project, I don't work with humans. I work with fruit flies. So some of you may be wondering how these pesky little bugs that gather around your food at home could ever have any use besides being annoying. Well, they have very short gestation times, so they produce new generations very quickly, much faster than mice or rats. They have short lifespans, and they have approximately a 10-day life cycle from which they go from an egg to an adult. They're very small. They don't take up much space. They're pretty cheap to maintain, and they're very easy to work with. But one of the coolest facts about them that I love is that we happen to share 75% of disease-causing genes with them. This makes them a wonderful, tiny, and mighty organism to study human disease. Now, I wanted to show you an example of data that I can gather from my project. So this is a fly chromosome. And yes, it looks much different than our X-shaped chromosomes that humans have. A large part of my project involves extracting these chromosomes and staining them different colors for DNA or protein. So on the left, you can see this fly chromosome I've stained blue for DNA. It makes sense that the whole chromosome is blue, right? Chromosomes are DNA, the whole thing's going to stain blue. Whenever I stain this same exact chromosome green for HP1 proteins, we see that the HP1 protein only resides in a certain part of that chromosome. So thus we can see that studies like this would be very informative for our lab as chromatin researchers, as well as other genetics labs across the world. So now that I've gone into the deep concepts of my research topic, how does my F-SCORE fellowship help me along the way? With the support of funding from F-SCORE, I no longer have to be a teaching assistant every semester to support myself. So that leaves me with a lot more time on my hands. More time to connect with other scientists at scientific meetings and do a lot of networking. And I am able to conduct this important research full time with the hopes of further characterizing this protein family that's involved in human disease. So upon completion of my studies, I plan on pursuing a career as a bench scientist, either in a clinical, industry, or university position in Alabama. My F-SCORE fellowship is making my dream possible by allowing me to continue earning research experience at UAB. And with the support of funding from F-SCORE, I am able to continue my pursuit of a master's in biology, which will prepare me for a successful career as a member of the Alabama STEM workforce. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone that's involved in my lab. Special thanks to past mentors, and a big thank you to my committee members who give me constant advice and support. Thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. That's excellent research and very encouraging. Thank you for staying in Alabama with that. We appreciate that. Our next discussion item will be presented by Dallas Lampkins, a current egg research fellow.
You'll have to forgive me for bringing my water up here. I've had a bit of a frog in my throat this week, so actually saving you all some misery. Thank you, Dr. Purcell and Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to be with all of you this morning to discuss the Commission's 12th quadrennial review. So the commission conducts this study every 4 years as a part of its statutory requirements outlined in section 16.5.12. And this year's study, it did include an online survey. It was sent to more than 350 internal and external stakeholders who have some involvement in Alabama's system of higher education. So as you can see from this chart, most respondents, 86% actually, were officials of public 2- and 4-year and private institutions. This is consistent with the response rate from the survey in 2018. And in this chart, you can also get some perspective of the various stakeholders that were involved in the survey for this year's quadrennial review. So into the meat of it. So when asked to rate the importance of the commission's responsibilities, 1 to 10, 10 being most important, as you might expect, serving as an advocate for higher education was the most highly rated responsibility, followed by developing and recommending legislation to ensure quality higher education. So that makes a lot of sense. The lowest importance one was reviewing and approving or disapproving programs for non-Alabama institutions. So, going beyond that and looking at where survey respondents were asked to rate the commission's effectiveness in each of these responsibilities on a scale of 1 to 4, we see reviewing proposals for new programs or units of instruction being the most highly rated, followed by administering the statewide student database. Some of the questions in the survey were related to the commission's authority and effectiveness. So when asked if the commission has sufficient authority to perform its statewide responsibilities, 72% of stakeholders did say yes. But that does mean that 28% of stakeholders said no, which means that almost 3 in 10 of the stakeholders who responded think that the commission doesn't have sufficient authority to perform its duties. This is consistent with the responses that we received in the study in 2018 as well. But when you look at the question about the effectiveness of the agency in performing its statewide responsibilities, more than 8 in 10 of the stakeholders replied yes to this question. So moving on to impediments to the commission's ability to provide leadership in higher education. 65% of stakeholders think that the political environment is an impediment, while 55% believe that the state's higher education structure is also an impediment. When you look at the question about the effectiveness of the commission staff, stakeholders rated staff responsiveness, positive and cooperative attitude, and knowledge on higher education issues as the top area of commission staff effectiveness. When asked about the significant issues facing Alabama's system of higher education, stakeholders rated teacher education and training as the most significant issue, followed by educating people for the workforce and increasing available student financial aid. So in conclusion, the results of the 12th quadrennial review did follow the survey results of the survey from 2018. Almost 9 in 10 stakeholders responding to the survey do feel that the commission is meeting its statutory obligations to the state system of higher education. And this favorable rating is likely due to the commission's ongoing efforts to promote higher education and also serve as an advocate for increased state funding and student financial aid. And some of the recommendations that arise from this study include continuing to provide data through the statewide student database, which the agency is doing through the new online data portal. Continue to serve as an advocate for higher education by focusing on increased funding and student financial aid, which the agency is doing through its annual budget hearings and the FAFSA completion portal. And then also continuing to coordinate with the state workforce initiatives, which the agency is doing through its new All In Alabama campaign and Education and Workforce Needs Index. Madam Chair, this concludes my remarks on the Commission's 12th Quadrennial Review. Thank you.
Thank you, Dallas. Very good insight. The last discussion item will be presented by Dr. McGill.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Chair Cross. I'm here to talk to you today about administrative procedures updates. And I know I see some eyebrows because this is not something that we talk about regularly when it comes to academic program review. The commission has heard updates to the administrative procedures around some of our scholarship programs in relation to some of the, state legislature changes and stuff and that sort of thing. So this would be a new occurrence within, I guess, the last 20 years, because that was the last time major revisions occurred to the academic program review part of our administrative code. There's been a few tweaks here and there, especially since Dr. Purcell came in, and you all have heard those just over the last couple of years. But what we're wanting to discuss today or bring to your attention is ongoing conversations that I've been leading with our colleagues at institutions who are the stakeholders, obviously, for our program review processes, and wanted to make you all aware of those conversations that have been happening around updating some of our processes for submitting new programs for review, for considering extensions and alterations, for monitoring post-implementation reporting, and also a couple of new policies, which you'll see in slightly bigger writing here, around micro-credentials, and also changes to instructional role. The commission has considered some changes to instructional role, most recently from Athens State. But those have been done through policy guidelines and not through an actual administrative procedure. So we've been trying to get everything that we currently do reflected in the processes, but also respond to some changes that have happened from accreditors that should make things easier for our institutional stakeholders to offer the paperwork and documentation that's needed for our review. So some upshots, we're hoping that this potential changes could come forward to the commission at the March 2023 meeting. As you remember, that requires a preliminary approval at the meeting, and then that opens up a larger statewide process for reviewing proposed changes to the regulations. And then there is a final approval that would be needed in order to move forward with any changes, hopefully at the new meeting. But given the kind of scale of what we're talking about, making changes to almost all of the sections of this, staff wanted to recommend that the Commission's Academic Affairs Committee start to become engaged in this process and become more aware of the kinds of changes we're hoping to make, and hopefully we'll be pleased with the work that's been done so far.
I'd like to ask the chair of the academic committee, Larry Turner, to collaborate with Dr. McGill on this project, and then Commissioner Turner can share it with the other committee members.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move into the discussion items. Each discussion item will be voted on individually. Any questions may be directed to the staff presenter. Our first discussion item A will be presented by Margaret Gunter. The annual report, Alabama Commission on Higher Education 2021, through 2022.
Commissioners, you can all let go of your breath now, the exciting time for the annual report. And it does start out on a happy note. If you look at the cover, opening doors for a brighter future. We've done a lot of work here to make sure our students have a brighter future. And it starts off with a record funding. We had historic state support from the legislature this year, $8.2 billion, over $2 billion of that went to higher education. We saw increases in our student aid programs and also funding for deferred maintenance at HBCUs. We will be going back to the legislature next year, asking for that deferred maintenance project to include applications from all of the public universities across the state. What did we do as far as when we meet together for commission meetings on a quarterly basis? Well, you approved 49 new programs of study this past year. The leader in that, healthcare and clinical sciences, that was the leader the previous year, but it doubled during this past fiscal year. The top areas in our non-degree programs were in the two-year system: construction, engineering, technology, and mechanical. We maintained the Alabama statewide student database that was legislated in 1996, that would be done at the commission. And currently we have over 14 million student records. Now you ask, what do you do with those? A lot of reports are produced through those records, not only for other educational entities, but also for business and industry, if they're looking to expand the business or if they're looking to recruit a new business in the state. Research is involved with that a lot, and they work directly with the IT department. You saw a presentation earlier this year about the new website that has a lot of features that will allow interactive activities through the portal. And in financial affairs, students benefited through the financial programs that are administered through AIC, such as AMSTEP, the Student Need Program, the Student Grant Program, the Police Officer and Firefighter Program, and the National Guard. We're having a record number of students apply for these funds, particularly in the National Guard area. We're continuing to partner with a lot of groups across the state to try to get students in college and to keep them there. We've done things like the FAFSA project with the State Department of Education, the Summer Bridge project with the institutions. A lot of things of this nature, and all in Alabama. You've seen a lot of the publicity that we've had across the state dealing with keeping students here in Alabama to work once they receive their degree. We also have two components of that: getting them to come back to Alabama. If they've gotten their degree here and left the state, we want them to come back to help us to grow our economy in the state, and also re-engage. We will be talking to legislators about next year about students who perhaps they have been a former student, did not complete their degree, or an adult who never had the opportunity or never went to college. And we're going to be looking at focusing on student aid for those individuals so that they may finish a degree and get on the critical needs list that we have in the state of job opportunities that will help all of us. I want to mention something about, you've got 3 pages in your booklet that are dedicated to line items. And I know a lot of people ask, well, what does this involve? What do you do with that? Well, one, if you pick up your souvenir booklet and turn to page 17, you'll see a program that last year at the December meeting, we had a student. He had a pretty bleak future. He got involved with someone who told him about a program at Athens State University. And it's the Recruit program to recruit minority males. And this week, in going through just seeing what was out there, we follow a lot of stuff nationally. I got a lot of calls about where are you as far as people going to college? What are your going to college rates? What are your completion rates? Well, this headline came out just this week. Amid teacher shortages, schools cannot afford to lose any more Black male educators. And this study was done by the National Center for Education Statistics. And a line in it says it's no secret that schools across the country have long struggled with their recruitment and retention. This was this week. 3 years ago, we were heavily involved with starting this program at Athens State and at Alabama A&M. We have seen tremendous success stories, and a lot of males go through this and complete their degrees. In fact, the young man who spoke to us last year is still teaching in an elementary school in the state. So a lot of these line items and things that we are involved with, it's not just the statutory responsibilities. In fact, when you think of an annual report, you look at the things that you have to just check the list off. We've done this, this, and this, but we really have expanded what AIC does beyond the parameters of just what the legislature and just what the law tells us that we have to do. Starting here, I want to take a quick run through of what we've done in the state plan. We've incorporated that now as part of the annual report. You approved the state plan 5 years ago. It's a 12-year plan. We're almost halfway through with it. Good news in improving access academically and financially. Students are more prepared. We're seeing fewer graduates from our high schools, but those who are graduating and going on to college, they're better prepared. And with the increase in the financial aid programs, there are more financial opportunities for them to take advantage of. The second priority is enhancing student success. And we have several areas that we're tracking there. We're seeing, again, when you're looking at student success, you have an increase in the number of associate degrees going through reverse transfers, and an increase in students who are transferring from the community colleges on into the four-year schools. We also have seen improvement in remedial or developmental education rates. So we're seeing students, again, who are more serious, it seems to be, in a lot of areas as far as their education. And then STEM projects. We're looking at STEM and how that has increased, and we have a higher number of people who are entering into STEM, and even better news than that, a higher number of those who are graduating. There was an article that came out today in the news that talked about UTeach. This is a program that is going to use 6 universities with helping people to get their STEM degrees, and hopefully they will be going into the classroom to fill some slots with some qualified teachers in the STEM areas. And then the fourth one is developing Alabama's economy and workforce. Well, we've used a lot of data. In fact, this past year, we released the Workforce Needs Index data. Dr. Purcell referred to the junkets that we made around the state to talk to the various workforce regions. We can show each individual region of those 7 where they have the most critical need and the least critical need as far as workforce and education, and how we can better partner and bring those 2 entities together. The last one is probably the most moving target: organizational effectiveness and efficiency. Well, I would list just some things that we have done, and these will change regularly. The FAFSA completion project, the All in Alabama campaign. We produce institutional student profiles. It's on the website. This is a great tool for students who are looking to plan their college career. And then for the second year, we have had the financial budget hearings. Each individual school was able to present to AIC their needs, so that helped us better to get an idea about presenting consolidated budget recommendation. So, Madam Chair, without further ado, I know there are questions galore. You want to know so many things about the annual report. I'll answer them, or I'll turn it back over to you for a vote to accept it.
Thank you. Any questions?
This is a great report. Did we do this in-house?
We did.
That's fantastic. And who all gets one of these?
We put it online, and then we distribute it to legislators, the governor, cabinet members, that type thing.
Do the campuses, campus presidents get one, or do they?
Well, they certainly can. I'm sure they could put it on the shelf for the rest of them that they get. But, you know, it's online, so it looks good. I mean, I think we like the title of it, Opening Doors for a Brighter Future.
Yeah, no doubt. Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Margaret. Chair entertains a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
So second.
Second, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The annual report is accepted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I sit down, I would like to also say publicly, Commissioner Carter, I want to offer my condolences and the loss of your dad, but just say you have been such an asset to this commission. You've always been very responsive, have been just a person who has great contacts throughout the state, and you have always used those to further higher education. So although we will not be seeing you each quarter, please stay in touch.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Our next decision, item B, will be presented by Mrs. Veronica Harris. Executive budget request for FY 2023-2024.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning. You can do it. Just left, right?
The budget request, the Code of Alabama, Title 41, Chapter 19, Section 6A3 states that each state agency should prepare and forward a budget request to the budget officer. The due date, as set by the law, is November the 1st of each year. In order to comply with the designated submission deadline, a budget request was submitted to the EBO. Any changes that are made by this commission will be submitted through a budget request revision. Okay, 8 is requesting a total of $77,909,449 for FY 24. Of this amount, $77,473,210 is from state funds. This represents an overall 26.48% increase over FY 23. 91% of the increase is directed at target efforts. 74% is to colleges and universities via grants and financial aid. 17% is for support of state programs. And this is our 189 appropriations, which is our pass through. The FY 24 request contains 39 programs under 6 different appropriation units and 3 new programs are included as well. We are asking for $6 million for Re-Engage Alabama. And according to the census figures, 1 in 5, 21.6% of adults 25 and over have some college and no degree. This program will target adults who have some college without a degree. It also addresses the increased needs of business and industry for credentialed workers. It includes $1.5 million for one-time campus support for campus efforts with an adult learn focus. It also includes $4.5 million financial aid for adults completing a degree related to fields on the state critical occupational list. We're requesting $150,000 for economic industry alignment. Now, economic industry alignment continues to align the work at the state's colleges and universities to the needs of business and industry. 8 use census and labor department data to develop an employment outcome report and an education workforce needs index to determine employee supply and demand for the workplace. This initiative is a strategy component in supporting Alabama's future economic success. Higher education micro-credential fund, we're requesting $1 million. This will support the development of short-term certificates at the state universities that lead to industry recognized credentials. ACC received funding to support the development of micro-credential at their institutions in their FY 23 budget. These educational certificates can be incorporated into existing academic programs or serve as a standalone credential available to persons seeking to enhance their work skills. In doing this budget, we had a planning assumptions for our planning and coordination, operation and maintenance. An increase is being requested due to need for employee termination costs, due to retirement, increased costs for building operations and rent, increases need for information service division, ISD charges, and for postage and telephone services. Also increases are needed for subscriptions, software purchases, replacement of computers and printers, shipping costs, and for shield dues and rising costs of general supplies in general. O&M is our main operation of the agency, but we only ask for 5%. And we ask for 5% for student assistance, with the exception of the Alabama National Guard. We ask for an addition of $2,527,048. This is a 46% increase, and this is mainly due to an increase of amount of applicants that we are receiving, but it will result in producing more degrees for our soldiers. 5% for other educational activities except the computer-based articulation known as STARS. 52.65% increase of $206,933 is needed to upgrade the technology and to continue to do outreach and marketing for their website. The Southern Regional Education Board, we're asking for a 22.86% increase of $150,000. This is needed for SREB membership dues and minority doctoral scholarships that's already in the pipeline. Also, we have AKEY, most of the other state programs, they're at the prior year appropriation, but we are asking for a 50% increase for AKEY of $50,000, and that is request for the expansion of their services. Deferred maintenance is 100% increase. We received $5 million this year for the HBCUs, but we are asking for an additional $5 million, and this will be asking for no match requirement. And also that will be done through the RFPs. Here you will see basically just giving you an overview of what I just spoke to you about of the increases, which was computer-based articulation, and for SREB, we asked for an increase for them, as well as for the Alabama National Guard, as well as for the deferred maintenance. So this is just giving you an overview of these different increases and decreases and showing you visibly what the increases are. Let me go to the next item. Okay. On this particular slide, you will see that we have the support of other state, which is AKEY, that's $50,000 that we asked for because of them expanding their resources. And next is deferred maintenance, as I already mentioned. Here you will see our major object codes. And here you will see that we have our personnel costs as well as our employee benefits. Now, we stated that we have 39 programs, but we have a very small staff, and we're only asking for 5% increase for the personnel costs. But most of this personnel cost is due to retirement and termination of that nature, because we do have a lot of seasoned staff here at the Commission on Higher Education. Also, we're asking for supplies, material, and operation, and this is mainly for subscriptions, membership dues, software, and things of that nature. We also are asking for the grants and benefits, which is a 29.18% increase. But if we get the $5 million that we're asking for deferred maintenance, and also if we get all the other increases for Alabama National Guard, that's why this increase will be significantly more, because of the fact that we're asking for more grants and more benefits. In our 1,400 line, that's our other equipment purchases, and this is mainly asked for, it's only $38,000 that we're asking more for this year. But it's mainly asked for computer upgrades, printers, and iPads and things of that nature. So that's the reason why this has increased. At this time, are there any questions? If not, the staff is asking approval of the 23-24 executive budget request.
Commissioners, I have a quick question. I noticed on support of state programs, there's a couple that are not funded again this year. I just wondered, did they request not to receive funds for the coming year, or what's that process?
Is there anyone particularly?
Well, I just noticed it was the Best and Brightest STEM program and the Museum of Flight. Just hit me something unusual that
They were supplemental. We received them supplemental, so they're not in the budget for FY 23. They came in our FY 22 budget, but they were not appropriated in our current budget that we're in for FY 23. And sometimes we do get supplemental, and perhaps we will get another supplemental this year for them. But since they were not in this FY 23 appropriation, we did not request any funds for them for FY 24.
it was sort of like a 1 year.
Yes, it's a 1 year supplemental. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the executive budget request FY 2023-2024. Okay. So
Second.
second, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye, and all opposed, like sign. Executive budget request is approved.
Madam Chair, for the record show that I abstained. I have a relationship with one of the organizations in 189.
Thank you. We'll make that note.
Thank you.
Our next decision, item C, the consolidated budget recommendation will be voted on after Dr. Jim Hood presents the 8 staff recommendation and Commissioner Stan Nelson presents the Finance Committee recommendation from the 8 budget hearings that were held on November 17th through the 18th, 2022. Consolidated budget recommendation for FY 2023-2024.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We heard from Sarah earlier on fruit flies, and I think the only thing shorter than a lifespan of a fruit fly is my acting career. Thank myself for sharing that fun time in my life. But it's my pleasure to be with you this morning to discuss AG's consolidated budget recommendation for FY 2023-24. As you know, AIC develops the annual consolidated budget recommendation as part of its statutory responsibility. And although this recommendation is among the first of many steps in the budget process, we feel this recommendation, along with the institutional budget hearings that we've started, really help establish a baseline for these budget discussions, as well as help create an awareness of some of the challenges facing our colleges and universities. Historically, AIC has based its recommendation on an ETF cap calculation, which essentially means that the recommendation is based on a rolling average of ETF state revenues, such as sales and income taxes, license and use fees, and other revenue sources. And of these funds, higher education typically receives about 25 to 27%. But I put this top part in red because we've had to move away from this approach due to spikes in state revenue. We'll talk about that a little more detail in this next slide, but this recommendation more or less relies on our state appropriation from the prior year, which is about 8.2% across all of higher education. But I just mentioned that we can no longer use our same ETF calculation because of spikes in state revenue. And this slide highlights some of those spikes. I want to point out here, I know this slide is small, but income tax is up by more than 1.5 billion over the prior year, or an increase of about 27%. Sales tax is up by more than 158 million over the prior year. And you can see below that, there's several revenue categories that are above 18%. And so if you look at that bottom line there, the ETF estimate increased by 1.78 billion from the prior year, which is an increase of 20%. And this really makes any recommendation based off of our historical ETF calculation really unrealistic. And there's an article in the, I think it was AL.com today or yesterday about how revenues have gone up by, I think it was 2.7 billion. And this is along that. I want to mention though that 2.7 billion is total state revenue. This is just ETF revenue. That's why that difference is there. But so we've had to change the way we've done business this year with the consolidated budget recommendation. But this year's process began with the institutional budget hearings, which was held in mid-November, November the 17th and 18th. And as with last year's hearings, this gave institutions an opportunity to share their challenges and highlight their areas of need. And once again, we felt like the institutions really stepped up and did a great job of highlighting the challenges that they're facing. And we hope that these various areas of need that we heard through the budget hearings are highlighted throughout this recommendation, particularly with regard to rising costs and inflation. We heard that throughout the budget hearings with most institutions. So this year's recommendation basically reflects an increase of slightly more than 207 million, which is an increase of about 11.2% for public institutions. Now, I do want to point out that this 11.2% is below our recommendation last year of 17.5%, but it's above what the legislature appropriated last year at about 8.2%. So we feel like this is a realistic, responsible recommendation for higher education. And this pie chart here reflects categories of funds, which we'll discuss in the next few slides, but I do want to point out two things. You can see that about 79% of the recommendation is in personnel and salary, which is in dark blue here. And then rising inflation costs, which is in that orange or tan pie slice here. And again, this is in response to rising inflationary costs, which were there. That was a common theme throughout the budget hearings in mid-November. So I mentioned the different pools of funds that we're working with, and this first pool of funds is dealing with personnel costs. As I mentioned, this is a recurring theme. And one thing that was interesting for me to hear is that, you know, not only are universities dealing with salary compression issues and other issues to remain competitive, but now they're dealing with positions that are remote and work from home positions. And we heard on multiple occasions where, you know, our universities they had a position and they lost qualified candidates to work from home positions, sometimes at lower salaries. So that's just another challenge that our college universities are having to work with. But this group of funds includes about $85.2 million and accounts for about 41% of the total recommendation. And these funds were determined by taking 4.6% of the prior year's appropriation. I do want to point out here that this was somewhat intended to be a standard of living adjustment, if you will. But if you look at the consumer price index and some of these other cost of living indices, this falls nowhere near what people are having to pay. You can see here energy increases of 17.6%, food increases of 10.9%. So again, this is reflected throughout our colleges and universities, in particular their faculty and staff. Along with personnel and salaries, we have a pool of funds, mandatory funds, which is what institutions are required to pay as far as their insurance and retirement obligations. This group of funds includes about 6.75 million and accounts for 3.3% of the total recommendation. And these funds came from the institutions. They were determined from needs assessment reporting surveys provided by the institutions. So that's where these funds came from. The next pool of funds deals with inflationary cost adjustments. You know, we heard stories throughout the budget hearings of construction costs going up in the middle of the project. One institution mentioned budgeting for a project that was $5 million based on the construction quote. And then several months later, throughout the construction process, that $5 million had turned into $7 million. So Again, our college universities are struggling with these types of issues, but this group of funds includes about 78.2 million. It accounts for 37.8% of the total recommendation. This particular group of funds were determined by taking 4.2% of the prior year's appropriation. This next pool of funds looks at weighted credit hours, and like we did with last year's recommendation, we want to set aside a pocket of money or a pool of money that recognizes increases in credit hour production, particularly for STEM and those other high-cost programs like engineering and nursing. This includes $37 million that accounts for about 18% of the total recommendation. These funds were determined by taking 2% of the prior year's appropriation and then allocating those funds based on their weighted credit average. This next chart looks at those distribution of funds by sector. You can see the universities under this recommendation will receive about 73% of the funds. Community colleges receive about 18%, and that's in line historically with what we've recommended in the past. And then the remaining funds for 9% will go to various statewide line items. This next slide looks at the different recommended budget amounts by institution. I know this slide, I know these numbers are small, but this table is also part of your handout. You can see that the first column represents the prior year's appropriation. The next two columns in light blue represent the institution's requested increases. And you'll notice for the institution's increases, you'll notice that some of the percentages are significantly higher. And that's due to the inclusion of capital expenses for construction projects and other types of things. And then the last two columns, they're in darker blue, represent the AICS Commission's recommended increases. And again, here you'll notice some variations in the percentages, but most of these variations are due to mandated, differences in mandated retirement, in insurance obligations by the institutions, and then some institutions have more higher cost programs like engineering and nursing, and so they would get, more funds as far as their wage goes. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks on the consolidated budget recommendation.
Question. Thank you, Dr. Hood. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the consolidated budget recommendation FY 2023-2024. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Consolidated budget recommendation is approved. Our next decision, item D, will be presented by Mr. Julian Rogers. The report on facilities master plan and capital projects request for FY 2023-2024 through FY 2027-2028.
Good morning. Unfortunately, I don't have Dr. Hood's acting abilities, but I will do my best to stand up here and present this. Each year, the public colleges and universities of Alabama are required by code to submit a 5-year facilities master plan to the commission. This year, the report covers fiscal year 2023 through fiscal year 2028. Each institution is also required to prioritize its capital request and to provide a needs assessment for requested projects. The 5 years reported are broken into 3 time segments: immediate, intermediate, and long term. The requested projects are further divided into 4 separate categories: new construction, major capital equipment purchases, renovation and remodeling, or deferred maintenance on existing structures. For the immediate year, institutions are requesting projects that total $2.29 billion. 72% of this funding is for the construction of new facilities, and 24% will be used for deferred maintenance or remodeling. $858 million, which is 37% of the total funds needed for these projects, is requested from the Education Trust Fund. Over the next 5 years, covered in this report, institutions project that $6.1 billion will be needed for proposed projects. This includes $2.2 billion for the deferred maintenance or remodeling of current structures and $3.7 billion for new construction. Institutions project that 62% of this total, equating to $3.77 billion, will be requested from the Education Trust Fund and other state-related funds in the next 5 years for facility purposes. Taken from information reported in the facilities inventory reports, this table shows the age of buildings that are currently in use by Alabama's higher education institutions. Almost 38% of the buildings were constructed between 1960 and 1989. In this time frame, the newest of the facilities have over 30 years of use, and the oldest are 62 years old. This is beyond the useful life of major building components. An additional 13.2% of the space was constructed prior to 1960, with at least one building dating back to 1810. The state of Alabama does not provide regular funding for capital projects for K-12 education or post-secondary education. The institutions in Alabama are allowed to float their own bond issues. Institutions commonly use tuition and student fees as a source of funds for debt service. The 2 and 4 year institutions currently have approximately $4.18 billion in bonds outstanding. In fiscal year 2022, the 2-year institutions paid $25.6 million for their debt, and the 4-year institutions paid $507.7 million toward their debt. Madam Chair, this concludes my report on the facilities master plan.
Thank you. Any questions? Chair entertains a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The requests are accepted. The next decision, item E, academic programs, will be presented by Dr. McGill. First program will be from Troy University, Master of Science in Applied Mathematical Sciences.
All right, thank you, Chair. Here are 4-year institutions first, and today we have a lower number of academic programs than we normally see, and you'll notice that there are a higher number of post-implementation reporting, so we're keeping ourselves busy on the academic side of things. Troy University is submitting 2 programs. The first is a Master of Science in Applied Mathematical Sciences. This program is going to be delivered fully online. It is comprised of coursework that's already been developed for the master's level offerings in education. So if you're thinking of educators who are math instructors and need a master's degree, they get master's coursework in their subject field. And in this case, we're talking about math. So those courses are being packaged in a way that allows a standalone mathematics degree by Troy. That means there's no new cost projected and very few new courses. I think there are only 2. Given the way the program is structured, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. Second program presented by Dr. McGill from Troy University is the Master of Science in Psychology.
All right, thank you, Chair Frost. This program from Troy University also would be delivered fully online. It is designed to extend their course offerings from the undergraduate level in psychology, which is among their most popular majors, into the master's level. Oh, thank you. Press the button there. There is a strong demand for master's level or master's education in psychology, primarily because it's a field of wide interest, and having a master's in general psychology can provide career advancement across a number of social and community related fields. There is certainly a need for instructors at the post-secondary level, especially at our community colleges, and then general interest among the community in enriching themselves through graduate coursework in psychology. There will be thesis and non-thesis options available. And there will be some costs related to hiring one full-time faculty member for delivering the program and new coursework. But staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. The next, thank you. The next program will be from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, presented also by Dr. McGill. University of Alabama at Birmingham, Doctor of Philosophy in Biotechnology.
Thank you, Chair Frost. We have colleagues from the Alabama system and UAB here in case there are any questions that arise from the Commissioner of Counselor. This Doctor of Philosophy in Biotechnology is proposed by UAB. They currently have a wide range of doctoral programs, research doctorates in biology, biosciences, biomedical sciences, but this would be the first one that is coming out of the College of Applied Health Sciences. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And so this focuses on biotechnology, which is development of new products in the biosciences and launching new ventures in biosciences. So there's a business component to this degree. There are currently offerings at UAB at the master's level, and this would extend those offerings into the doctoral level. This proposed program fits with the statewide kind of innovation corporation and their projects around expanding commercialization of technologies and wider efforts around research and design. And of course, we all know Birmingham is a hub for the life sciences. So the proposed program, reflective of those statewide goals, does include letters of support from a number of external organizations that recognize the need for such a program. It is a somewhat expensive program and will require $350,000 of internal reallocations to get the program up and going. Most of the funding requirements are around hiring new faculty members, staff members, and assistantships, which will go to very competitive students. But the program is expecting to bring in significant investment from external sources, particularly for sponsored research and design efforts. So with that, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. The next program will be from the University of West Alabama, presented by Dr. McGill, Educational Specialist in Physical Education.
Thank you, Chair Frost. So the University of West Alabama, she said, is proposing an education specialist in physical education. This extends their current offerings, which go all the way up to the master's level, to one level higher, which is hopefully with approval from the Alabama State Board of Education will lead to Class AA certification, specifically in physical education. There are two other programs in the state at JSU and UAB. These are geographically distant from the University of West Alabama. We did receive one response from the graduate deans that concerned duplication, so I mentioned that because of the distance, we thought that another program would be justified. There are very little additional costs, including only minor costs for faculty. And as I mentioned, the University of West Alabama has quite a deep bench of offerings in the area of physical education and human performance. So with that, staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. Thank you, Dr. McGill. The next program will be for Coastal Alabama Community College, presented by Mrs. Kristen White, the Associate of Applied Science in Salon and Spa Management, Cosmetology.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
This program will prepare graduates for employment as licensed cosmetologists. The college currently offers a 48 credit hour certificate in cosmetology. This degree will include those same courses with the addition of 10 more hours in general education requirement and a new class in entrepreneurship. Graduates of the program will be prepared to sit for the examination required to become a licensed cosmetologist through the State of Alabama Board of Cosmetology. There are currently 7 other community colleges that offer salon and spa management programs. However, any of these is at least 3 hours or more away from any Coastal Alabama campus. Coastal is also exploring collaboration with Shelton State on this degree. The program will require no new funds to establish because of the existing certificate program, and it will allow an opportunity for those in the program to continue on to an associate degree. The college is projecting that $500,000 in tuition will be generated over the first 7 years of the program. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The program is approved. The next program will be from Calhoun Community College, also presented by Mrs. Kristen White, the Associate of Applied Science in Respiratory Therapy.
This program will prepare graduates for employment as respiratory therapists, which are still included on the statewide in-demand occupations list. Calhoun currently offers 7 accredited healthcare programs, and the experiences of that health sciences division will serve as a good foundation for this program. The proposal included 9 letters of support, which included the Huntsville Hospital Health System, which has agreed to collaborate with Calhoun on this program. Alabama Department of Labor data notes 40 openings per year in Region 1, and EMSI data shows that the 4 counties in closest proximity to Calhoun predict a growth rate in openings for respiratory therapists between 2020 and 2030. Once the program is established, Calhoun will seek an association with Jacksonville State University, which offers a baccalaureate degree in respiratory care. The college will seek accreditation through the Commission on Accreditation for Respiratory Care and will prepare graduates to sit for the exams required to become registered or certified respiratory therapists. Calhoun is projecting $1.4 million in new funds over the first 7 years. The majority of that money will be used to hire a full-time program director, a full-time director of clinical education, and a part-time laboratory instructor. They anticipate that the program will generate close to $1.2 million in tuition. Staff is recommending approval of this program.
Thank you. Chair entertains a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. Program is approved. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. McGill give a brief summary on the informational items.
Thank you, Chair Foss. Normally, we don't address the commission regarding information items, but as you'll see from the packet, there are quite a few more post-implementation reports than you are normally seeing. This is part of an overhaul of our systems related to program review, which we've been engaging in our over the past year and a half or so. And our latest update to the system is getting all of our housekeeping in order for post-implementation reports. So you'll see that there are 10 reports of met conditions from our community colleges on this meeting and 32 from our four-year institutions that have met conditions at this meeting. And this is in an effort to get our records up to date. You'll also see a number of post-implementation reports coming in the March meeting. So I wanted to give you a preview of some of those that may have not have met conditions. Hopefully will be on the meeting there, and we can consider present to you all how you might consider proceeding on those. So with no further ado, there you are. There are a 2-year program. 4-year, as I mentioned, quite a few. And hopefully we'll be on track so that we don't have more catch-up work to do at future meetings. Staff is recommending that the commission accept the information items, including the expanded post-implementation section of this month's agenda.
Thank you, Dr. McGill. Chair entertains a motion to accept items 1 through 7 collectively.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I just have to say, when I look at page 98 in our program and saw that programs not meeting post-implementation conditions, none. That said to me, what a great compliment that is to Dr. McGill and his staff, because they've worked closely. I looked at some of those in detail, and you can see that there's been work done to get all the institutions to that point of their programs meeting the standards. And so I compliment our staff. I took that as a great job.
Absolutely, and we commended everyone on the staff and team there. You guys do a wonderful job. Thank you. All right. Let's see, did we do that motion? Chair entertains a motion to accept items 1 through 7 collectively.
So moved.
Second, all right. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions or comments? All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The informational items are accepted. And we're at the end. Chair entertains a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, like sign. The meeting is adjourned.
Great job, man.
Thank you.